Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Karen Cahill, who has worked in the cranberry industry for 9.5 years and currently serves as Deputy Executive Director at Massachusetts Cranberries. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I have for our listeners, your full bio in our show notes. That way they can kind of get an overview of everything it is that you do at Massachusetts Cranberries. But I'd love to start off by having you share more about you and what you do.
Sure. So Massachusetts Cranberries is also known as the Cape Cod Cranberry Growers Association. We have been around since the late 1800s, representing the cranberry growers of Massachusetts. There's approximately 200 or so family farms in southeastern Mass. So what we do is we help them with regulatory compliance. We advocate for them in a variety of ways. We lobby for them at the state and federal level, and just support them and support the industry in general. It's so important to the state's economy. And so we provide direct services, and then in general, we communicate to the public about the importance of the farming industry and cranberries in particular. I've been here with the association since almost a year now, so since last April. Prior to that, I was with a different cranberry organization, so it was an easy transition for me to make. It's the same players. It's a really great industry, really excellent people to work for and work with. Farmers, as you can imagine, are really salt of the earth people. They work really hard, and it's a pleasure to help them in any way that I can.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a good point about cranberries being crucial to the local economy. And so I'd love to expand more upon that if you could just share some more information and the great benefits that it has or positive impact that it has on our economy here in Massachusetts.
Sure. So cranberries are the number one food crop in Massachusetts. There are some other ag crops like hay, I think, and hemp is kind of coming up and coming. But we're the number one food crop, specifically in southeastern Mass, so including Plymouth and Bristol counties, Nantucket, and the Vineyard. When you look at the industry as a whole, you think of on-farm production, but also processing and manufacturing, marketing, logistics, all the things that this industry touches. It's approximately 6,400 jobs that are facilitated, and then $1.7 billion annually to the state's economy. So there's a huge economic importance. Also, Massachusetts is the birthplace of commercial cranberry growing that started in the early 1800s on Cape. So there's a huge historical, cultural component. You cannot drive through this area of Massachusetts without passing bogs. It's really special to this area's history and culture. Pretty much anyone you've met that's from this area has touched the industry in some way, shape, or form. Oh, my dad used to work on bogs, or my uncle did this or that or the other thing. So it just plays such a huge role. And then, just in general, that it's a commodity, it's food. We're providing a healthy food to the nation, the world, really. Massachusetts is the number three producer in the world. We are
Wow.
behind, Wisconsin is number one and Quebec is number two. So up until probably the mid 90s, Massachusetts was number one in the world. Um, and then for a variety of reasons, kind of uh, transition to that number three slot, but still a big deal. It's important to the state. We're important to the industry. It's, not something that 10 years ago, I would have thought I'd be speaking so passionately about, but once you get into it and you get to know the history and the details, it's a really, really great industry and really important for the state.
Yes, and you also brought up a few good points about supporting farmers with advocacy and lobbying and whatnot. And so I'm curious to hear what some examples of that might be or any types of issues you might have supported them with.
So particularly in my role, I do a lot of external communications. I assist the executive director with government relations. But really, what we want to do is explain farming to people who are unfamiliar with it. We want you to let you know what the ins and outs are of farming. We want you to know the environmental impacts. Even if you don't eat a single cranberry in your lifetime, it's important to understand that the cranberry bog system, the wetland system, is very important to the environment in terms of managing stormwater, water in general. And so uh, that part's really critical. So you can take cranberries or leave them, but the actual system, the bog system, the way it plays into the environment down here in southeastern Massachusetts is really important. So these farmers are managing that water. They'll watch the weather. They'll know if a big storm is coming. They'll act appropriately. And so you can imagine if there's over 11,000 acres of cranberry bog and 60,000 acres of open space that is protected by these farms. In the absence of that, if you were to say build shopping malls and housing developments and you start paving all of this area, this can be a real problem in terms of water um, runoff, taxing the sewer systems and all that kind of stuff. So the environmental benefits are large. We communicate that. We communicate normal ag practices. A lot of people just don't understand what goes into farming. And so we just try to educate people at all levels, from local town administrators and planning boards and things like that, all the way up to the governor, lieutenant governor, including people at the federal level. So, a good example is next week we're going to Ag Day at the State House. This is a yearly event, so we'll be there. And we will be sampling some products as well as, handing out information. There's certain bills that we would like to support. There's certain bills that we don't support. But really what we just try to do is like lead with science, lead with data. I've already rattled off a ton of seemingly random facts, but we try to lead with that kind of information and let folks make those decisions. And a really critical part of our advocacy is letting those people who are making these decisions kind of understand maybe unintended consequences.
Mhm.
There's talk of transitioning to electric trucks in the near future. It's a standard that's kind of coming over from California. And, what we just want to let people be aware of is, are they available for our farmers? Are they is cost prohibitive for our farmers? Can they even withstand the loads that need to be hauled with them? Can the, small dikes and uh, water crossings and things like that, can they withstand these heavy vehicles? Just kind of things that you think, okay, yeah, electric's great, let's go that direction. But if you're not thinking of like the trickle down effects, that's where we want to come in and make sure that those things are being thought about.
Yeah, and that's a great point about really being able to paint the whole picture. And like you said, coming in with bills that you do support and don't support, and being able to show voters or people really all the different sides and how voting one way or the other, moving something in one way or the other can really impact the farms, which is at the heart of our state and at the heart of our country as well.
Absolutely. And it's not always about you're right, I'm wrong, vice versa. It's oftentimes coming to a compromise, but coming in with good information, sharing, actual truthful information, and being able to compromise, when we can.
hmm And you also brought up something that I think is especially prevalent right now, unfortunately, in Massachusetts, which is overdevelopment. And so being able to bring in a lot of houses with builders and whatnot. And of course, like you said, that can mean that cranberry bogs are potentially sacrificed in order for that to happen. And so I'm curious to hear if Massachusetts Cranberries has done anything or has done a lot of work to kind of help protect any of those bogs, or kind of what your stances are on that.
So it's not necessarily about like protecting them from developers. The land is the farmer's property to do with as they wish, right?
hmm
And a lot of these farms are multi-generational, fifth, sixth, seventh generation cranberry growers. So for them, I think it's fair to say it's a lifestyle, it's a calling, and they're not necessarily in it to make a gazillion dollars.
hmm
So they don't really want to do anything other than farm, but some folks, the financial pressures are such that you have to kind of think creatively. We give them information, we lead them towards programs that might help them renovate their farms. Some of them are 200 years old. We need to make some capital improvements. We've done renovation tax credits to kind of help with that ability to do that. So anything that we can do to keep them farming is a win. Um, some of them will sell their upland property for developers, and that's their choice, right?
Mhm.
Some of them are doing alternative energy projects, be it solar arrays. And then a lot of folks are going towards agritourism to try to supplement their income, which is a really great option. It's definitely there's a market out there for it. It's such a unique harvest in particular is such a unique thing to see. And there's only, I think, 4 or 5 other places in the US that you can actually see it. So um, we have this kind of diamond in the rough down here, and there's a lot of opportunity for folks to expand that part of their business. But yeah, we certainly want to advocate for farmers to keep farming, and we want them to be as successful as possible. So we try to seek out programs, advocate for programs that were going to help them do that.
Yes, and I love what you mentioned, the part about being innovative or creative with different ways they can supplement it. Like you mentioned agritourism. I forget which farm it was, but I remember a long time ago when I was little, I went on a field trip to some farm in Kingston, I think it was, and got a little cranberry plant that I took home, and it was fun and being able to learn about the process and whatnot. But I think being able to, like you said, include all those different ideas that farms can do is great, and it brings people in.
Yeah, I think when people think about farming too, you think of other commodities where if you're having a bad season or the economy is such, you say, oh, I don't want to grow corn this year, I'll grow soy or what have you. But
Mhm.
cranberry growers don't have that luxury. The soil is unique. You cannot really grow anything else in a cranberry bog. It's just the way that it is here. You might be
Mhm.
able to grow other things on your upland property, some of that open space that I was talking about before. But really, you're kind of locked into cranberries. And so that's maybe a disadvantage that our farmers have compared to other farmers across the US. We also just don't have the footprint to expand the way that some folks in the Midwest can.
Mhm.
There's a lot of open land, and here we just sort of have the footprint is the footprint. So, what can we do with the land that we have to make it more efficient? Maybe you're putting in newer hybrids that allow you to produce more berries on the same amount of acreage, things like that. And when you talk about innovation, I'm sure all farmers are innovative, but the cranberry industry is relatively small to other commodities. So big manufacturers don't make equipment specific for our growers. Like a John Deere
Mhm.
is not making a cranberry harvester piece of equipment. These folks, men and women, they get together, they share ideas, they're cobbling together in the best way their own equipment from maybe something they got from the tobacco industry or the strawberry industry or what have you. They're making what they need to fit their own needs. Very innovative. They've been doing it for 200 years. It's really an awesome thing to learn about and to see.
Yes, I love that. And I'm sure you come across people who get into the cranberry industry. I don't want to say accidentally, but without having any experience. Like, for example, if they're passed down a property that, or they inherit a property that has bogs on it, or maybe they purchase property that has bogs on it, and they might feel a little bit overwhelmed and have no idea where to start with being able to maintain these bogs. And so I'm curious to hear what you would recommend to them or give advice to them for just people who are kind of making their way in and out without really knowing what to do or how to get started.
Sure. Yeah, that's what we're here for. We provide direct services to growers. We'll help them figure out maybe some regulatory things that they need to do. We offer training so they can get their pesticide credits and things like that. Also, the there's an outpost of UMass Amherst in Wareham called
Mhm.
the UMass Cranberry Research Station. And they are a wonderful resource for growers. You can bring samples to them and say, what is this disease I'm facing or pest or what have you. They produce a guide to cranberry growing. They produce chart books. So there's lots of resources there. In general, the industry, especially here in Massachusetts, is really collaborative. So just connecting younger growers with more veteran growers, and they no problem sharing information. It's not like a competitive in that way where they're not willing to talk to each other, share ideas, share best practices, things like that. So we're here to make those connections. It's kind of rare that you would see someone come in without any kind of uh, sort of history or connection, but it's not unheard of.
Mhm.
There's a couple that I've spoken to that did just that. They had almost no ag experience. They work in IT professionally, and they found property that they liked, and they just dove in. And they're
Mhm.
doing some really cool stuff. They're doing like regenerative farming, so
Oh,
putting back
wow.
into the soil whatever the plants are taking out, and using creative methods like they are using goats to um, eat the weeds instead of having to use any kind of treatments, things like that. So, and they have a booming touring business as well. So they're doing great. And they jumped in just in the last, maybe since COVID, so the last
Wow.
5 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear about that. And with it being just now spring at the time of that we're recording this, I'm curious to hear what might be coming up within Massachusetts Cranberries, if there's anything happening within the next year, just exciting projects you might be working on.
Yeah, so we'll be at Ag Day, which is exciting. And I think the day after Ag Day, they're signing a proclamation about trade in ag and the importance of export markets. So that's kind of an interesting development. It is important. I think right around a third of the U.S. crop is exported, so it's a big avenue for farmers to sell their crop. We're kind of in the middle of a feasibility study on an educational center to see if that's something that is feasible, which could be very interesting. It could house a museum. We could, really ramp up a tour program and field trips and things like that. So that's something we're kind of working our way through. I will say the Heritage Museum in Sandwich is
Mhm.
about to open a very large, like really large cranberry exhibit. So
Oh,
that opens on
amazing.
May 10th, I think. So May through October. So certainly encourage people to go over the bridge and check that out. Harvest is obviously always our time to shine. That's really October is it can start as early as mid-September and it can go through early November, but October is the main deal. Those are the big things I can think of off the top of my head. We're always monitoring, like I said, we're monitoring stuff through at the State House and certain bills that are coming through. We are offering different services to our growers. So we have 3 new people in the office as
That's
of
awesome.
about the beginning of the year. So we're ramping up, what we can provide to our growers. So we're happy to do that. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Next year is going to be a big year. It's the International Year of the Female Farmer or something like that. Like
Oh,
really,
wow. Very cool.
um, and we do actually have quite a few women, female farmers. I know can think of one who's like I think she's fifth generation, and it's always passed down through the women in the family. So we'll be looking forward to kind of capitalizing on that, leveraging that, and getting people to know that side of things. I don't think you really always think of females when you think of farming. So
Right.
um,
Yeah.
that'll be cool. That's next year. Oh, we're just starting to talk with a food incubator in Boston. They're creating a cranberry barbecue sauce, and they're wanting to leverage that at like the World Cup and Sail Boston and all these really huge upcoming events that are gonna put Massachusetts on the map. So,
Yum. I love cranberry barbecue sauce. When I missed Little Red Smokehouse in Carver, for anyone who's
oh
local,
yeah.
they had the best cranberry like barbecue wings, I think it was, but they were so good.
Hmm.
But it's so interesting to hear how that's coming with that food incubator, because like you said, it really put Massachusetts on the map.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got some really high profile events coming up. And you know, to have cranberries part of that is a no-brainer.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you mentioned briefly at the beginning the services that you offer to farmers, but I'd love to hear an overview of what it is that you do to support them in addition to the advocacy and lobbying work, but just services specifically for anyone listening who could be in need of them.
Yeah, I mean, we help them with regulatory compliance. So there's different forms and procedures that you have to go through. We help them with that. We have a whole bog restoration program. So if someone's looking to retire their property, there are entities out there that'll purchase it and turn it back into wetlands, which is not as simple as just, okay, I'm done farming, I'm going to walk away. There's actually quite a bit of work that needs to go in to kind of let nature kind of come back to where it was prior to 200 years ago. And so that's an interesting program. And it's an option for farmers who don't, it might not be that they're getting out of the business altogether. They just might have a bog that's in a particularly difficult area to farm, and they might want to retire that bog, or they could be wanting to their whole farm.
Mhm.
Um, Another couple of things we're working on, which sort of indirectly benefit the growers, we're working on a workforce development program. So that's going to be reaching out to local schools. I'm working with Mass Ag in the classroom as well. But local ag schools, local community colleges, just trying to get the notion that the cranberry industry is a viable option for folks. It's not just farming, there's lots of different specialties that touch the industry, and so we're getting that going, which will help down the line kind of feed the workforce that's across ag, really probably across any industry. The
Mhm.
workforce is one of the challenges. So we're getting that going. We're going to start a leadership program. Wisconsin has a pretty robust program where they take younger farmers, that next generation, and kind of walk them through and give them the skills and tools needed to become the next generation of leaders in the industry. I think the average age of our farmers like 70. So we're really in need of kind of getting this next generation ready to go. And so that will be helpful for them. That's something we're putting together. Other direct services, I'm trying to think. Oh, we have a farm planning service that we provide. So without getting into the weeds here, but like farmers might need a farm plan. It's just good to have one. It's also good to have ones when you're applying for grants and other funding programs. They want to see that you have a plan and where you're going with it. And so we offer that service. A lot of our programming is funded through grants. And so we try to help those services are subsidized by the grants that we get, but then we also make sure to tell growers of any grants that could be directly given to them. And so we're
Mhm.
on top of that, sharing deadlines, sharing information, how to apply. I think we're going to try to come up with like a grant writing template. I think that's something that farmers may want. These folks are really focused on farming. It is a full-time gig, even though a lot of them have second jobs as well.
Mhm.
So where we can kind of fill in those gaps and help with the specialties that, we can, those are the types of services that we provide. We just last fall did a succession planning program, so trying to help the growers um, know the process of how to identify someone to pass the farm to and what goes into, insurance and legal and taxes and all that kind of stuff. And so trying to help them, as I said, the average age is pretty high. So trying to help that grower base plan for their future is one of the other services that we were providing.
That's amazing. And for anyone who's listening to this episode who would be interested in, I guess it's becoming a member would be the right terms, but becoming a member of Massachusetts Cranberries, like what's the process for that?
Absolutely. So you would just call us. Would really. I mean, we have captured probably 90% of the industry, so we're good on grower members. Although certainly, if someone's listening, absolutely, you can reach out, give us a call, visit our website at cranberries.org, and we would set you up with an account. But we also have sustaining members, and so we have different businesses throughout the Commonwealth that maybe would want to provide services to our members or just get their message in front of our members. And that's a great opportunity. So same deal, visit our website, cranberries.org, or give us a call and we can get you set up as a member. We have this really targeted group of people. We have different opportunities and events where you can get in front of them. You can advertise or attend our events and network. And so if you feel like that's a good fit, definitely reach out. That's a good opportunity.
Perfect. And now I'm curious to hear about you specifically. I know you mentioned that you didn't quite see yourself getting into this industry, so I'm curious to hear what your career path was like that led you to this point and maybe what inspired you to get involved.
Sure. So I went to school for journalism, and then I have really good writing skills, but I also have really good graphic design skills. And so I worked in a variety of marketing departments. And it's the kind of thing where really you can kind of work in any industry. I've
Mhm.
worked in education, I worked at a software company, architecture firm, engineering firm. So I kind of bounced around a little in terms of industries. And then I was working for myself and I just answered a Craigslist ad, which is like really dating myself here. Um, and it was like an hour from my house. And I thought, oh, well, let me just see what this is all about. And I think it was such a whirlwind. I think I was hired in like a minute. And
Oh my
I had
gosh.
just one of the best bosses ever. And so she got me into the industry. And then once I was here for a short while, it's truly the people that you meet, the people that you're working for. It was probably the first time ever where I really felt good about the work that I was doing really like having an impact and who it was impacting. And you work at a really large company, you might just feel like, I don't know, I'm just making some rich guy richer or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're having such a direct impact. But that's not the case here. My last organization was just three staff members. Here it's just I think there's five of us. So it's small, it's intimate, and you meet the growers, and they're just so thankful. Like I said, they have their skill set. I can't go out and grow cranberries, but I have my skill set, and they are really oftentimes very vocal and very thankful for the work that we do in leveraging what our skills are to help them. So that's how I ended up here, and then I just can't seem to quit it because it's fun, it's different. What I was doing before, it was the national organization for all cranberry growers. It doesn't exist anymore, but that was more kind of consumer marketing focused. And
Gotcha.
now, as similar as it is here, it's so different because I'm so focused on ag and like the growing process and stuff. So I have learned so much in the last year, and that's been really interesting and really motivating to learn that side of things. And I have so much more to learn, but
Yeah.
it's been a really great aspect. But I would say for sure it's the people, not only that you work with, but that you're ultimately kind of working for is really really great.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who may be interested in getting into this industry as well, what advice would you have for them just based on what you've learned along the way?
Sure. I think, to have an open mind that there's not just it's not just growing cranberries. There's so many different things that touch the industry. We have large companies. I mean, Ocean Spray is based here. They're just one of, I think, 4 or 5 different handlers that are based in Massachusetts. So think of all the different aspects that they would have in that company. And then we have a really large grower, 80 Makepeace. They're the largest grower in the world. And they have all kinds of different sort of skill sets required in their organization too. These folks need um, laborers, but they need like equipment, people that are good at fixing trucks um, and that kind of thing. So like really hands-on. There's all kinds of avenues in science, um, be it bug science or weeds or the plant, cranberry plant themselves. They're doing some really cool stuff with like creating hybrids and genetic testing so there's just so many different like avenues that you could take and be a part of the industry. And as we kind of move forward, there's all kinds of cool technology avenues too. They're using drones now. It's really super early days, but there's going to be, I think that's the way forward is to precision ag and figuring out how can we leverage this new technology to make things easier and more efficient and more precise.
Mhm.
So that's like a whole nother avenue where you could get into the industry. Um, yeah, so there are a lot of opportunities, and it's our job to get the word out, but it's also kind of thinking creatively yourself and what you're interested in and what you like to do. It's not simply, well, I don't want to be a farmer. I don't want to work outside, whatever. There's all kinds of course, if you do want that, there's opportunities for that. But there's a lot of other ways you can kind of be a part of the industry.
Yes, that's a great point, is that it's not just like you said, being a laborer, but being able to think about all the different facets that might go into it and where those needs might lie. Karen, as we get closer towards the end of this episode, one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is what their favorite local businesses are to support. So I'm curious to hear what yours might be.
Sure. I'm gonna stay on this cranberry theme. So I've got to say Berry Guys, which is a deli in
Love.
Carver.
Their chicken salad is my favorite because of
Yeah.
the cranberries in
Absolutely.
it.
They're just a legendary shop, and you are for sure gonna see some cranberry growers if you go in there any time of day. Um, that's a great spot. Makepeace Farms in Wareham is also a really great spot. They make very delicious cranberry centric sandwiches. And then they also have like a little store that has all kinds of different cranberry goodies like chocolates and uh, oven mitts. I don't know. They have all kinds of cool stuff. And there's a lot of
Nice.
history in that building as well. So those are the two that I love to go to.
Awesome. And I know you shared Massachusetts Cranberries website earlier, but I'd love for you to share again where our listeners can find you and the organization online in case they'd like to reach out and connect further.
Absolutely. The website is cranberries.org.
Perfect. And I will link to that in the show notes so that way our listeners can click through and connect with you all from there. But Karen, thank you so much again for coming on today's show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me and have a great day.